Peace, family. How y'all doing?
Wonderful.
Yes, yes. My name is Jamar Smiley. I'm not one for talking, so I just jump right in. They say I'm African. The best of the best, but only half a man. It's funny how half of a man could be the master of land and sea and time and space and civilization. You can find pieces of me with the Mayans, the Aztecs, Egypt and China, from Nubia to Russia to Azerbaijan. And as I bounce from forest to forest, giving myself until every corner of the world has a survival care package wrapped tight and bundled from me, they set fire to my land, name it their own, and call me the savage, the jungle bunny. They say I'm American. I guess because America is stolen. As I am taken from my land with the spear that I'm holding and a head full of feathers, trapped on a boat that is headed to a land full of man-made endeavors. And I arrive on this land to be greeted by the hand of a man with a head full of feathers. Known to the people, native to this land, whipped and chained to split and vein this land into pieces. The forest becomes alive as animals run and hide. The river turns into red and red crackles the sky. The white man has arrived. This land, so bright with hope, turns blue. The mountains no longer sing. They cry in desperation as I am beaten and bonded to the brothers of my skin. But I am native to creation. So my art form is craft. And Pocahontas makes the paint from all the colors of the wind. They say I'm black. Blacker than a scarab. Blacker than infection and direction that'll scare us. Scare us in the darkness. Etch us out the history and time where the centerpiece of centuries of mysteries and lines defined by the statues and obelisk, molded from alabaster, inspired by the gods of creation. Fuses and sparks create passion and arts, conducting a synergy of energies that pass through the towers and pyramids, charged in civilization. But this darkness, the darkness that I'm in, the darkness woven deep into the patches of my skin, is darker than the blackest of plague nights. It happens to lay right in the middle of death, in the back, in the plain sight. This darkness you fear is the end. They are scared of my very existence. And so, my first breath sparks the outcome. Born in the city of death, full of no hope, my blessings will go broke. Even if a boy gets handed a plate from the man of the state, stating, yes, we can. Because after every death I stand, the yes starts to doubt some. And no matter where I go, from coast to farm, I boast my charm as bad luck rains down on my coat of arms, and a life full of peace is just mostly harm, because a full life is death at 19 or 7, graduating from school and running back to moms, or skipping around the church, numbing out the mobs of pigs and clan members coming out to bomb you, covered up by the hood, my hands up in the sky, write a message to God, my plan is not to die. I wonder if I can sing and dance up the slide. I'm hoping it's not my night to answer to Allah. My pants slide to the ground and move. And so my next breath sparks the outcome. Get rid of the gun, chalk the side of the body, cover them up with sand. Now X marks the Malcolm. Till we are scared of our own existence. Scared of being strong-minded, outspoken super beings, full of imagination and originality. We went from keeping it real to keeping it at bay, and now we wade in the waters of reality. The reality is, we take pride in our freedom after 8 hours of slavery, Monday through Friday, only to support and embrace our youth as they entertain the white world by destroying all the best of our culture. And we join in, singing and dancing, breaking and popping, big and small booties, shaking and thotting, doing everything we can to play our part in coonish scenes. We take pride in being woke, but ashamed by the thought of being the answer to the question, how could Martin lose a dream? They say I'm African American and blacker than a scarab, and these crackers try and trap us for our passion and our heritage. So I must be something worth living for. Well, I am the son of Ocean and Osiris. My iris bends the earth and universe at the blink of my eyelids. So how am I dying? How is my history aging? Am I crazy, or do you hear what I'm saying? I am creation, you are creation, and we make a seed that'll breathe out the nation. The life of the womb gives life to the lung, and the life of the seed brings life to the drum, and the life of the drum gives life to the sky, and the sky gives life for nature to provide, and when nature provides, it gives lands, oceans, stars for the darkness, moon for the motion. The light in the darkness was us in the making, so that means you and me, and we are creation. We even gave birth to this nation. Now, take notice, because as soon as you know this, as soon as you live it and breathe it and show this, they say you're a threat to the nation, destroying communities, attacking them, and scaring them. So will you take back all your freedom, create your own universe, or will you stay black or African American?
We can all go home now. Whoa! Can I get one more clap for this brother here? Man. And I got your money. Yeah. Anyway, I like Jamar when he comes up and sets the tone for what we're doing here, you know. Let me just first introduce my guest here. This is a second Conversations with the Streets, and what we're trying to do is bring our people from all over the country, leaders and black professionals from all over the country. And why here in this place, Seattle, Washington? Well, what people don't know about Seattle is that there's a lot of laws that happen here first before it goes around the country. People don't know that. You know, the 3 strikes law started right here in Seattle, Washington, Washington State. We just changed the law on police accountability, and we are the first and only state with police accountability. That started right here in Washington State. And even though we are few as far as black people in this state and city, the beautiful thing about Washington State, when we started this process of getting police accountability, which was historic, is that we went to Native tribes. I don't know if you know, but there are more Native tribes in Washington State than there is in the whole United States put together. You know that? So what we did is we went to Native tribes, then we went to Latino organizations, then we went to Asian Pacific Islanders, then we went to unions, and we said to these other people of color, listen, we've been fighting this stuff by ourselves separately, and they've been wearing us out. It is imperative that we come together because now we know how much we need each other. And so it didn't become just a black issue no more. We had families represented, white families, Asian families, Samoan families, Mexican families. We had everybody represented that have suffered or lost due to police violence, you know? And, you know, the system has been successful at beating us, or us individually, but they can't beat everybody. So we brought everybody together, where everybody had a story about why this needs to change. And I was talking to Big U and Jamila and Mysonne, and we were discussing that same blueprint blueprint, we need to take that all over the country. A blueprint that says everybody that's affected by what's been going on, we almost hold our hands together and fight this together. Because we've done it here. We want that duplicated in every other city and state. You know, once you set a precedent, then it's easier for other states to follow suit. We have to do something about what's been going on because it's not getting no better. Because the shootings of unarmed victims is so tragic, it's almost hard to even understand, you know, how it could happen and nothing happens as far as accountability. These are unarmed people. You guys remember when they used to have them cowboy movies back in the day? And it was almost a sin for you to shoot somebody in the back. In the cowboy movies, you was a coward if you shot somebody in the back. That's all we seeing today. That's all we seeing today. Shooting unarmed victims in the back. And nothing's happening. So some of you that don't even understand this is that Washington State had the worst law on police accountability. Worse than down south. Worse than Mississippi, Alabama. Worse than LA. Worse than Chicago. We had the worst law. Because we couldn't hold a police officer accountable unless we could prove that that officer had malice. Somebody say, what's malice? Let me tell you what it is, because that's what I asked when I first came back home. Well, what's that? They said, well, that means you got to know what an officer was thinking in his mind at the time that he shot somebody. I said, that's impossible. They said, there it is. So in 2010, there was a native carver who was homeless. His name is John T. Williams. And there was an officer named M. Burke. And John T. Williams was walking across the street, and he never messed with nobody. And M. Burke called on him, and he was hard of hearing also. And in 4 seconds, shot John T. Williams in the back. And guess what? M. Burke was found to have violated police policy. The police found that that officer violated police policy. But we still couldn't hold him accountable. Why? Because we could not get over that malice statute. The malice was standing in the way that prevented any type of investigation. We couldn't get past malice. If you can't get past malice, you can't get to an investigation. So all they were worrying about was, did he break the law? And if the law says we have to prove that he had malice, you could see in over 30 years why not one officer has been convicted of a crime of deadly shooting in this state. But not this time. Yeah. So just to give you a little education, right? So if an average citizen shoots somebody and commits a homicide, there's a homicide investigation. They want to see, well, did you know this person last year? Did you get into a scuffle? Was you messing with somebody's wife or husband? What was going on before this incident? So they go back to do an investigation on a homicide investigation. Well, our law didn't give no police officers no homicide investigation. With my brother who was killed, Shay Taylor, in 2016, those officers knew my brother before. They knew him, but we still couldn't investigate that because malice was right there. So when we changed this law in Washington State, we got our attorneys to write the law the way the community wanted it. So this is what we got, so you can understand what you have today. We have mental health crises training. Why is this important? Because of the third of the people that are being killed by police officers are experiencing mental health crises. So we want an officer, when they go out there, to be able to identify that he's seeing somebody in crisis and stop killing people in crisis. Yes. De-escalation training. That means when you get on the scene, don't escalate it because you want to be authoritative. You have all the authority. Don't escalate an issue. De-escalate an issue. And now we're not just asking you to do it. It's a law that you do it. Okay? Now listen, when they killed my brother Shay Taylor, they shot him They handcuffed him while he laid on the ground, and they let him bleed out for 8 minutes. The Stranger newspaper came out with the article and showed the actual tape. They let him, handcuffed him. He was no threat to anybody, but they handcuffed him, and they just let him bleed out. So what did we do? You probably don't even know that rendering first aid was not even a law. They didn't even have to render first aid because it wasn't a law. We made rendering first aid a law. Yes. So if you shoot somebody, you better do your best to try to make sure they live, or you're going to be held accountable for it this time. Those are important things there. Extremely important. So let me just say this so I can just give you a little bit more information of how we did it. There was an educational process that Not This Time gave meetings every single week, every Wednesday, because we wanted to bring community together with law enforcement and politicians. Why was that necessary? Because we needed the education. And I needed those politicians and law enforcement to come before us to tell us what their responsibility is for us on record, so that we can hold them accountable and put pressure upon them. So during these 3 years of that educational process, we were educating the community. And then through that education, the community took personal accountability for what they learned, right? And so when you're trying to move something, let me just say this. Marches are great. Rallying is great, because we did it. But there's nothing more important than learning about legislation and policy, because you can march for 100 years and nothing has to change. But if you start understanding how the system works through legislation and policy, then we can shift some things. So those 3 years was an educational sit down about legislation and policy. Because when I first came home, nobody even knew that we had the worst law in the nation. Nobody even knew that no matter how bad a law enforcement officer's behavior is in Washington state, we could not hold them accountable because of malice. Nobody even knew that. But when we start having those classes weekly, people were pissed off. They was like, what do you mean? I said, listen, no matter how bad an officer's behavior is in this state, we couldn't hold them accountable. And it's not by what I say. We have the data and the evidence that shows it over 30 years. But we don't have that law anymore. Now we have the first police accountability law in the nation. And like I said, we want to take that blueprint around the countries to brothers and sisters in other states and cities and make sure that they can also get their laws changed there. It's not easy. But one more thing about that. Black genius is a beautiful thing. You can defeat white supremacy with black genius. Oh, yes, you can. And for you young people in the room, let me just say this before I go to that next point. Anybody that has made a mistake in their life, can you raise your hand? So young people, did you see that? So young folks, understand that everybody has made a mistake. Your mistake don't have to define you. I made a bunch of mistakes. I mean, some real bad ones, right? I went to federal prison because of my mistakes. And I had to work myself back into my life and to take my name back and to take my life back. And so when I was starting to fight for police accountability, you know the first thing they're going to think, that guy got a record. He's this, he's that, and he's that. But black genius don't worry about that. Let me tell you something about mistakes. This is what I learned. Yeah, thank you. Let me tell you, this is what I learned. This is what I learned about my mistakes through black genius and how to overcome what people will try to throw up in your face. Tell your story before your enemy does. Did you hear what I said? Tell your story before your enemy tells your story. So for 20 years in my life, I've been telling my story, speaking in prisons, on TBN, on Montel, everywhere I've gone, I've been telling my story of redemption, of what God is capable of still doing. I've been telling my story. So look at this. So when the system started talking about, you did this and put me in the newspaper and all that, you know what the people said? We've been knowing that for 20 years. You ain't telling us nothing we don't know. Don't let nobody define you. You define your own story. No matter what, yes. Young folks, you never have to be defined by a mistake. Get up every single time, because everybody in this room that raised their hand had mistakes just like you. Everybody's going to have a mistake. But what's going to define you and define who you're going to be in your life is when you get back up and you brush that mud off of you and you go get it back right. Every time you got to get up, because there's brilliance in you. There's greatness in you. And these people here, you seeing the finished product of great work that everybody's doing here. But they're going to share with you their own stories of where they came from to let you know you don't have to be defined by your mistakes. Not one bit. So be encouraged, right? And let me say this. My father, rest in peace, he was a brilliant man, the most brilliant man I ever known in my life before. And I remember we having a conversation one time, and my dad says, you know, son, I have some expectations of you. I said, bring it on, Dad. What's up? He said, son, this race in life that you're running, this is what I want you to do. I want you to finish the race. And I was like, shoot, nothing. I ain't gonna finish the race. He said, hold on. He said, with all your disadvantages, son, as a young black man, not only do I want you to finish the race, I want you to finish first. Oh my God. I got to finish first? My dad was genius because he knew that I would have to create the genius inside of me in order to do what he asked of me. This is why we must also impress on our children high goals. You see, in there's communities where the mother and the father might be a doctor and a lawyer, and the kid grows up, and the doctor and the lawyer is something that's real relative, real normal to them. They grow up knowing that this is nothing. And then there are some communities that is a dream. We in our communities have to normalize greatness amongst our children. Yeah. We have to normalize greatness to when they wake up and they recognize the greatness and the genius inside of them, regardless of the obstacles. Let me just say this. I grew up, my dad was a pimp. My mom was a prostitute. I had all the disadvantages in the world that they told me, that you would never be anything other than that. And if I would have listened, my whole life would have been defined by what they said I could never be. So I remember one day that I was teaching at a university, and I was explaining to them about this book that's called Siddhartha. And I'm almost done here. It's one of my favorite books because this book is a young man who is trying to find his life. And his father was a priest. And his father wanted Siddhartha to follow behind him, but Siddhartha didn't want to follow behind his daddy. So they had a disagreement, and none of them talked for days to each other, just sit there and didn't talk to one another. Until ultimately the father relented and says, okay. So Siddhartha and his best friend Govinda went and started discovering life together. They went and discovered this, and I'm telling this story to the students in college, right? They went and discovered this religion, they experienced this religion, they start discovering all these religions until one day they heard about the illustrious one, who was the Buddha. So when they heard about him, Siddhartha's best friend Govinda went and joined the Buddha. Siddhartha didn't. So they broke up for a while. And periodically, Siddhartha would come back, Govinda would come back to Siddhartha, and they would talk, and then Govinda would go back to the Buddha. Here's where I tell the students, one day that Govinda is going to be a great professor, up underneath the Buddha. Understand that, students. So here's the next scene. Siddhartha is walking down the street like this, and the Buddha is coming the opposite, the same direction, and they meet each other. And the Buddha knows Siddhartha. The Buddha says to Siddhartha, Siddhartha, why haven't you chosen to join me? Do you believe there's a better way? And Siddhartha says, no, Buddha, I don't believe there's a better way. But this is what changed my life when he said something. He said, but it is impossible for you to teach or communicate to me what you have learned in the hour of your enlightenment. In other words, Siddhartha said, there is no other way, but I'm not trying to be a professor. I'm trying to be a Buddha like you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when I told the students where I come from, I said, had I took what society said my life would be, that's all it would have been. I was forced outside to find new information and knowledge. And that new information that forced me up outside of the norm, because you come from a pimp, you can never be nothing. I was forced outside to find new information. And that new information, I told them college students, got me here teaching you and your professor. Black genius! To my brothers and sisters that might still be in the streets where I used to come from. What I learned is some valuable principles about things that we've done in the street that's transferable to a regular life. There are some geniuses that you learn that are transferable. When we were doing police accountability, people would ask me, how are you so calm? I said, because I was in places in the streets that if I wasn't calm, my life would be taken from me. That was something I was able to use. So when I had all the people talking all that crazy stuff, saying he's this and all that, it didn't move me because I'd already been in a place that could have cost my life if I didn't show poise. So there's a lot of relatable things that you could use over here and conquer the system from the streets. Everything don't have to be lost from out there. And let me say this. One of the most important things is resolve. Resolve. Somebody asked me, when you were facing life in prison, because we've seen that movie American Pimp, we saw you in that movie, I couldn't have did that. And I told them, I know. Because if you was just making your mind up at the time of your trouble, you're going to fail. You have to resolve your mind. You have to be resolved that if you're fighting for something you believe in, you have to be willing to give your life for it. Martin Luther King said, if a man living haven't found something worth dying for, he's not even fit to live. If a man living haven't found something worth dying for, he's not fit to live. That's resolve. So if we are going to get our people together, we're going to have that same resolve. If we're going to unify together, we're going to have that same resolve. And when I talked to Umar Johnson with the last event we had, and RZA and Judge Joe Brown, I told them, as I told my brothers and sisters here, this is not about ideology, because the system has used ideology to separate our people for hundreds of years. This is what this is about. This is about black unity, black love, and our youth. And if we can all come together elevating that, we're going to get the unity that we need as a people. But that's the narrative. Because when you start bringing ideology in, the system is perfect at knowing how to divide us with that. So everybody that's been coming here from all over the country is on the same narrative that you must take out there. This is about black unity, black love, and our youth. That's the narrative that we're starting here in Washington State and carrying it all over this country. Thank you. Love you guys. Jamila T. Davis is something special. But I'm going to let her sprinkle you guys. She comes all the way from New York to be a part of this beautiful conversation with the streets. Release your measure, baby.
Hello, everyone. Wow, that's a hard act to come behind, but I'm going to do what I can. So I want to talk to you today about the transformative power of love. And I'm going to talk to you from a place of my experience. Many ask the question, what is love? And oftentimes it's mixed up or confused, you know? How many people have been told that I love you and love is hurt or stabbed you in the back? Has anybody experienced love that hurt or didn't feel too good? I know I have. Some people call love a noun, others describe it as an adjective. But real love to me is action. It's powerful energy that is able to transform anything. Love is about purpose and passion. It's the very reason that each of us was placed here on this planet. It's for us to love. It's through the power of love that mends and heals people and that can change any circumstance or any situation. So I say that to say my life is a story of love, lack of love, and what the power of love was able to do for me. My name is Jamila T. Davis. Today, I'm an author, I'm a motivational speaker, and a television personality. Most recently, my story aired on a show on CBS called Pink Collar Crimes that received over 2 million views. And today, I have a lot of accolades underneath my belt and a lot of achievements that I've accomplished. But I certainly have a lot of hardships that I suffered and a lot of life lessons that brought me to the point. And it goes back to like what Andre said. You know, God often takes us through circumstances and situations to put us on the path of purpose. A lot of times when we're going through things and we're hurting and we run from it, you know, a lot of us want to be comfortable in life. So anything that happens outside of our comfort zone, we run away from it because we fear failure, you know? If anybody asks you what you fear the most is being embarrassed or being told you can't do something and then you fail doing it. So we often don't move out of our comfort zone. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Queens, New York, to 2 loving parents. My mother was a school teacher and my father was a transit supervisor. My parents migrated from the South to the North. So anybody know about the South and people coming to the North, that was the big thing, you know? And my parents really lived very, very dirt poor. They grew up in a little town called Kinston, North Carolina, which is very, very, very small. And they use education as a means to overcome poverty. So when they made it, they were determined to give their children everything that they themselves didn't have. So I kind of grew up with the best of everything. My mother had me in the church choir. We did judo, tap, ballet. Every day of the week, there was another lesson that was laid out for me. And as a kid, my goal was to please my parents. So I did very well in school. I was a straight A student. I just did everything that they wanted me to do because for me, it was to receive the accolades of my parents, for them to say, you know what, daughter, job well done. Well, life for me, y'all, changed up a little bit when I got into my high school years. So I was accepted to High School of Performing Arts. Any of you guys ever heard of the famed school, Fiorella LaGuardia High School Performing Arts? Fame, I'm gonna live forever. I went to that school. I was a drama major in that school. And I'll never forget my first week going to school. I live in Queens, which is the suburbs, and Manhattan is where my school is located. So Manhattan is the big city, you know? So I would take a bus and 3 trains to get to school every day. And I felt accomplished, like, okay, you know, I'm 14 years old, I got it going on, I'm taking this bus, I'm taking this train, I'm doing my thing. And the first week of school, I met my very first boyfriend, or who was to become my boyfriend. And he was a 16-year-old drug dealer from the South Side projects of Jamaica, Queens. My mother wasn't too happy about that, y'all. So basically, you know, I wanted to be down. I wanted to be a cool kid. I wanted them to love me. Like, I wanted to have the latest sneakers and do all the different things that the girls that were dating the drug dealers did, and that I did. So I kind of like instantly, almost overnight, went from a good girl gone bad. And the problem began at that point is that my mother put her foot down. And she said to me, Jamila, either you're going to choose him or you're going to choose us. Which way will you have it? And I think she expected me to say, oh, mommy, I'm going to choose you. But that's not what I said, y'all. I said, I'm going to choose him. I want to be over there. And that I did. I packed my bags up, and I was in the projects. I was happy. For me, it was nothing like the fresh smell of piss in the elevator that excited me. Now, some of y'all could laugh about that, but coming from the suburbs and the nice little house on the corner with the grass to seeing the hookers and the prostitutes and the pimps, it was just something about the street life that lured me. And I got in, and y'all, I just seemed to never get out. But with that first love, something happened to me. And remember, I talked about that love that hurt, that love that sting, that love that felt so good, but yet at the same time, it hurt so bad. So my boyfriend, who I ended up giving myself to at 14 years old, ended up cheating on me for a baker. He said that this girl, she was 16 years old, and she made her own money. So she was an independent woman. So he ended up leaving me to be with her. Do y'all know that feeling of devastation I felt as a 14-year-old underdeveloped child who was entering into an adult world and thought I knew everything? I rebelled against everyone to get hurt by the very one that I left my mother to chase after. The pain, y'all, was unbearable. Still a pain that I may admit to this day may not have successfully healed from. All I could think of what he said. He said, I left you for her because she was an independent woman that got her own money. So you know what I did? I said, guess what I'm going to be? I'm going to be an independent woman that gets my own money. And Mr. Sir, I'm going to show you what you missed out on. And that is what I did. Instead of healing from the pain that was dealt to me, I used that same energy to basically redeem myself. And how I redeemed myself, my first thing I did was at the age of 15, okay, I went to high school full-time, and I got a full-time job at the Haagen-Dazs ice cream parlor serving ice cream. And I was making good money, and it was good because I was doing better than a lot of my peers, making good money, but it wasn't enough for me because still deep down inside, I was hurting, y'all. I still never healed from the pain. Nobody never told me that there's a thing that you go through, and there's a healing process. There's a way that you've got to do this thing. So what I did was I used money, material possessions, people, places, and things to mask the hurt inside of me. And it became a chase for more. So similar to how a drug addict gets a fix, my fix was a money fix. Because the more money I had and the more things I had, the more people would be like, yo, she fly, oh, she this or she that. And I used those things to mask the real pain that I was feeling inside. So it led me on a chase. And that chase landed me to be a multimillionaire by the time I was 25 years old. And I don't brag about that because I didn't even do it the right way. But I was chasing that bag because I was chasing that healing. You understand what I'm saying? I was chasing to fulfill that inner void that nobody spoke about, how you solve this problem that you're going through inside. So long story short, I became a real estate broker, and I was like a go-to person for celebrities. I grew up in Jamaica, Queens with Ja Rule and DJ Clue around the corner and, you know, Jada Kiss down the block. And so all of these rappers and things like that, they didn't understand how to get credit. So they had cash money, but they didn't have credit. And I was always the girl that was kind of advanced in age, so I learned the credit system. So I made a business out of fixing credit for people to get cars and to get houses. And I did it really well. And what happened with me was I started out first legitly, but the praise and esteem of people, for them to say, oh, she could get any deal done, or she could help anybody, and to hear them say, yes, she did a good job, I was willing to break the law because I wanted to receive that esteem of people. Why? Because still deep down inside, y'all, I was hurting. I was still that girl suffering. So I was willing to risk my life because I didn't love myself enough, because nobody ever sat down and taught the class on self-love. We teach math, we teach science, we teach social studies, but does anybody teach the black woman or the black man in school how to love yourself? How to say, you know what, hold up, baby. I'm not going to give you this body because it's a precious thing that God has given me and you don't deserve it. So because I never got that course, you understand what I'm saying? I was hurting inside and didn't know how to fix the pain. And the only way that I knew how to fix the pain was to get that money. And baby, that money I got. I had bought houses on the hills. I bought all kind of Maybachs and Bentleys before the rappers had it. I had it first. And I like that. I like being able to roll through the blocks of New York City and my brand new spanking brand new Bentley, and people like, yo, that's Miller. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Check me out. Now, I want you to correlate this human being that I'm describing to a lot of these human beings that you see in the street that's using material things and possessions to define their self-worth, to say that I'm this or I'm that. You're really looking at a hurting person inside because nobody taught them that their self-worth was bigger than materialistic things, all right? So what happened to me is, you know, they have a saying that God chastens those that he loves. And I was one of his. I always had a heart for God. I always had a heart to serve his people. So even giving them information, I was ahead of my time. I helped so many people in my neighborhood buy homes and cars. I just didn't do it the right way. Well, I had the right intent, but I didn't do it the right way. So because God chastens those that he loves, he had to sit me down. And my sit down was in 2008 when I was sentenced to serve a 12-and-a-half-year sentence in federal prison for bank fraud. At the time that I was sentenced, my babies were 9 and 11 years old. I had to explain to them that mommy will not return home until you are ready to go to college. That was a very difficult thing. And in that state, I felt like I had experienced the worst thing that I could experience in my life. When the judge banged the gavel and said 12 and a half years, to me, he might as well have said, you are pronounced dead. Because that's where I wanted to be at that time. I couldn't imagine serving a decade plus in jail. Like, what would my life look like? What would it be? So for many, many, many months, y'all, I stayed in despair. Just disbelief, looking around like, what in the world is this? And God, how did I land here? And you know what, y'all? All those friends that I chased after and all those people that I made money to impress, ain't near one of them was around. In fact, some of them got up on the stand and pointed me out. Jamila T. Davis, there she goes. There, she's right there. You understand? It's at that point that you get to realize that things that you thought were so important aren't actually important at all. When I became inmate number 592-053, I realized at that moment, the things I was chasing wasn't really worth it. All of us now have a spending limit of $300 a month. We all wear the same khakis. We all are the same. There's nobody that's bigger than you or little than you. You're all on the same level. And at that point, when I had to take the hair weaves off and the nails and all the designer clothes, guess what? I had to face my demons face to face. I had to deal with what I was running away from for all those years. That little 14-year-old girl that was hurting deep down inside and was trying to mask her pain, she could no longer mask it. And at that point is when I fell on my knees and I surrendered to my maker. And it's at that point I said, God, either you fix this situation or fix me, or you take me, because I don't want to be here anymore. And it's at that point that I surrender that God began to deal with me in such a way that I never dreamed or imagined that he would. But he used a vessel, and the vessel that he used to speak to me is the vessel called love. And that came through my mother. The same woman that I told her, baby, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to be with such and such. No, ma, I don't want to listen to you. It was that same lady who I defied, that same lady who I embarrassed, who took my kids up underneath her belt, who would take my calls every time I called, who made sure the commissary was on my book, and who spoke life back into my lifeless body. She said, baby, when you've gone as low as you can go, all there's left to do is to look up. And I'll never forget the words that she told me, because every day I would get to that phone just to hear her breathe life into me. And I had a big case. If you look at my case, my case is with Lehman Brothers Bank. I was said to have victimized them. Now, if anybody knows about the financial crisis, like they were one of the leading people in the crisis that spiraled the cycle. But this is why I tell you about God. Sometimes you look at things and you be like, well, why is he allowing this to happen and they're this and that? Because it wasn't about Lehman Brothers Bank. It was about getting Jamila's attention. I know if I leave Jamila out here with these money and these people, I'm never going to get her attention. So guess what? I got to let something tragic happen so I can shake my daughter up, so I can get her attention so she can finally hear my voice. And the thing about God is he's constantly talking to us, but a lot of times we're not listening. We're not listening because we're busy listening to our girlfriend, our boyfriend, or somebody else. When a situation and crisis happens, instead of getting quiet, we're so willing to vocalize. And when I couldn't vocalize anymore, I had to shut up and listen. And when he began to talk to me, it was a voice that just filled my inner spirit up. And through that inner feeling, I learned that I had the gift to write. Now, mind you, in the world I was chasing paper, I would have never stopped for a second to write. But behind bars, I became the author of over a dozen books. Through that transformative power of love, my mother, who was once the school teacher, set up a publishing company for me. And she hired an editor for me to publish books while I was in prison. My first book was a self-help series for incarcerated women. And that book went around the world. And literally as an inmate, I would get letters from other inmates telling me how my books transformed their lives. What inspiration was that as an inmate? Are you following me? And that same mother who was sued by Lehman Brothers Bank, and they went after my parents because I had money in my account, and I had written my parents a check, which they wrote right back to me when I needed it to pay these lawyers and everything else. Lehman went after my parents for $400,000 and obtained a judgment against them. So now the house that my parents worked all their life to pay off, they had to get a mortgage on their home to pay off the debt that their daughter incurred. So when I see my parents on the visiting floor after that, first of all, I was so scared to come out. I said, they're going to hate me for the rest of my life. I done caused these people who worked so hard to have to give up their life savings for me. So I saw my mother and father, and I thought that they would have mean faces, but they waved and hugged me hard. And I sat down and I said, Mommy, Daddy, you not mad at me? They said, we don't care about any money. We would give our life for you. We don't care about this. This is nothing to us. We love you. At that moment, y'all, I was introduced to agape love, unconditional love, love that was not based on anything except the fact that they absolutely loved me. So from that point forward, my parents poured this love in me that began to cycle love into the other inmates around me. Because I was being poured and healed by their love, I began to heal others around me because I wanted to do for others what my parents had done for me. And through that process, I created these self-help books for incarcerated women, and I started a nonprofit organization from behind the wall called Women Over Incarcerated. And I galvanized the women that I was with, and I showed them, like, listen, we could show our faces and we could tell our stories so that we could get help for others. And it's like Andre said, if you allow somebody to beat you to the punch and tell your story before you get a chance to tell it, you understand what I'm saying? They'll be able to dangle that carrot over your head for the rest of your life. So we began to come out and tell our stories, and our posts and our pictures started going viral from behind the wall. So but by the time I finally was released from prison after 9 years in prison, and that's what I served. And a lot of people will be like, man, you know, you wasn't angry or upset with God about the 9 years. No, because it took 9 years for me to bake the cake, you know. Behind bars, I was not only able to write over a dozen books, I went back to school. I got my associates, my bachelor's, my master's, and I'm currently working on my PhD. So when I finally exited prison, y'all, like, we was on fire. Like, I had a whole social media frenzy. People was going crazy, like, Jamila T, I'm like, wow, look at the love that I'm getting from people. So from the day that I stepped foot out of prison, I knew that I was going to pay my way forward. And what it did was it led me to my purpose. And what I do now is I go into the community. Many of you guys may know my partner, Yandy Smith, who is a reality star from Love and Hip Hop. And what we do is we create curriculum for children. Right? So we have entrepreneurship programs, we have coding, we have graphic arts, we have theater arts, and we make going to school cool again. Because I know if I could reach that little girl that was just like me, about to make the mistakes that I once made, and I could tell her from a credible messenger standpoint, sugar, this ain't it, then guess what? I could save a life. And that's what I do each and every day. Now our curriculums are in schools across the country. We have programs that we teach on Saturday where we give children up to $2,000 to start their own business as teenagers. That's what we do. That's the transformative power of love. So I'm going to leave you with this message. It's love, y'all. People ask, what can I do to change my community? Where can I start? All you got to do is love. Will you dare to love your neighbor? When you see the person walking across the street that might need your help, would you dare hold on to their arm? When you see that kid in the street that's going left, even though that's not your kid, would you dare to take 5 minutes to talk to him? Would you dare to smile at the person who's having a rough day? And say, you know, sister, I love you. Or sister, your dress looks nice. You know, them shoes are nice though, Shug. You know? Would you say that to someone? It's that power of love that can transform and that can change. So we can start and talk about big steps, but the small steps is start with your heart. Open up your heart to the power of love. And if you do so, it will transform your life just like it did mine. Thank you so much, Andre, for having me. Thank you. Woo!
My. This is what we're doing, y'all. We're bringing our people from all over, sharing these stories for our young people to know. No matter where you think you are, no matter how bad you think you did, you can recover from anything. And it's not good enough for us just to talk about it. We need to show it. So in these events, we're going to do an event every month here until December, end of December, and then we're going to take it across the country. So what I like doing is that every event we will have people that are doing local work, great local work, and we will highlight that work of those individuals. We did that last month, we'll do it this month, we'll do it every single month, and when we go to other cities, we will make sure that we have leaders in that city that's up on the panel and organizations that are doing great work locally that might not get the visibility that they should get, and by giving them that visibility, maybe help them get funding. You know what I'm saying? My friend Joaquin Garrett is a genius. Oh, he's a genius. And he runs Africa Town, and they're doing big old things, opening banks and housing, and that just, he can explain it better than I can explain it. Joaquin, please.
So peace, how's everyone doing? Y'all feeling all right? Yeah. All right. Let's give it up for our brother, Andre Taylor, tireless running. You definitely, exemplify turning pain into, power and passion for change. And so I know since he's been back and hit the ground running, he haven't stopped. And the motto is, what? Do the what? Do the work, and that's the truth. As far as me, for K.Y. King Garrett, representing Africa Town, it's a movement, it's an initiative, it's a lot of things. Third generation from the Central District, Africa Town, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight. So just by a show of hands, how many people have heard of Africa Town? Oh, that's doing pretty good. Usually it's about 5 people. And then I say how many people heard of Chinatown, and everybody's hands go up, right? lot because in every city that you go to, pretty much outside of China, and there's a community of Chinese people, it's called what? But in every city, when there's a community of people of African descent, what's it called? Yeah, everybody, people ducking, vesting up right now, huh? Looking around, yeah. So we have to challenge that narrative, you know, and change the narrative around black spaces, right, around black people, because there's a negative connotation that's been assigned to it. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the work. I appreciate the opportunity to share it with folks, and I'm glad that so many people have heard of it. One thing that I do find out is a lot of people have heard different bits and pieces and don't really haven't seen the big picture and the vision. And so we're gonna start with just a little history about Seattle and the Central District, where black people have been for over 140 years. This is William Gross. He was a pioneer. He came here in 1882. He bought 12 acres of land from Henry Yesler, who that street is named over, and established the Central District as a place where black people would settle. He began to partition off his land. Black people migrated and they settled. That's right off of Madison, in that area, 24th. His house is actually still there, but he doesn't get a lot of prominence. He's a pioneer, entrepreneur, community builder. Around World War II, more black people began to migrate here from the South. They was fleeing, you know, the terrorism, the Jim Crow, post-slavery, sharecropping societies of the South, and they were coming to the North for better opportunities. My grandparents were part of that migration. They came here to work at the shipyards, they came here to work at Boeing, and they came as a part of military with the war economy. When they came, fleeing Jim Crow, they met Jim Crow's cousin in the form of housing covenants, which made it so that black people could only live in certain areas, such as the Central District. And so that became the place where they settled and made a community. And it became a rich community. So this is Seattle history. There was riots. Anybody ever heard the Coon Chicken Inn? Yeah, that's Seattle. I mean, I like chicken, or I did like chicken. That was one of the hardest ones to try to give up. I'm fighting it every day. But this is part of the history. This is the racial restrictions, the covenants that was actually in the deeds that said you could not sell to what they called an Ethiopian, right? That's what it says in the legal language. That meant black people. We still grew a rich community. We know Ray Charles started here, Jimi Hendrix, born and raised. Quincy Jones got his start here, and a lot of other black people came to this area. There was a very vibrant jazz scene on Madison, on Jackson, right? That was part of the national jazz circuit, right? And we had a self-sufficient community, businesses, pharmacies, beauty parlors, restaurants, all of the things that make a community sustain, and we had to create those, they had to create those of their own. So, anybody ever heard of this? Yeah. So what happened though is the community was divested from, right? Anybody heard of redlining? Yeah. So it put the red line around the community, no loans, you don't get insurance, can't start a business, can't improve your properties. Properties are, just for the fact that black people are there, they're valued lower. And for years, then it just got ignored. And then we know the 80s came, and what happened in the 80s? Just say no. But they let it in the back door, right? The crack came in the community. That was like what really was the final blow as far as cracking up our community and destabilizing and really wiping out a generation of wealth, right? So the generation that was supposed to take it to the next level, many of them got caught up on one side using, and on the other side selling, which then led to this. We didn't see federal policy that was started and piloted in Seattle, Washington. Did anybody know that? Before they shipped it out across the country, they tested it here. And that was the mass incarceration. So now today, what do we see? We see articles every other day talking about how our community has basically been destroyed. The population has been displaced, and Seattle is booming. Who's here? We got Microsoft. I mean, Boeing been here. Amazon. Google's here now. Oh yeah, all the tech companies are here now. Starbucks, right? Multinational companies, and they're growing in the industry. It's just been growing and growing. You would think that if we're here and we're all together, everybody would be what? Elevated. Everybody would be getting a bag. You get a bag, you get a bag, you get a bag, right? That's not what's been happening though. So we see the statistics. This is a plan called Seattle 2035. Anybody ever heard of that? Yeah, that's the plan for Seattle for the next 20 years. And when we looked at that, I didn't see my children, I didn't see the peers I grew up with, I didn't see, our community as a part of that. So what we did, and here's the stats, here's just some of the stats. #1 state economy, all of this. You see cranes everywhere. They building. Who are they building for? Well, when we looked at that Seattle 2035, it was not for us. So our response was to design and create our own plan for our future. We just called it Black Seattle 2035. You know how in the movie, usually the first person to get knocked off is who? You see what I'm saying? I remember Q-Tip and, Poetic Justice, every movie, it'd be the black person. So we said we gotta change the script and write ourselves into the future. We gotta write a positive future and outcome for ourselves, for our children, our future generations. And in doing that, we didn't have to just look to, well, what did Microsoft do? What did Bill Gates? He's rich, this entrepreneur. We could look to our own legacy, right? We know what this is? Right, and this one is Tulsa, Oklahoma. But this wasn't the only Black Wall Street. It was Black Wall Streets in Durham, Black Wall Streets, Rosewood, Florida. It was Black Wall Streets all over the country. Because coming out of slavery, we were about self-determination and building for ourselves. And the reaction to that was the Ku Klux Klan, Jim Crow, and all of those things. So we look to our own history. We know the richest man in history is who? Not Bill Gates, Mansa Musa. So we look to ourselves for our inspiration for our future. We know this scene? Wakanda, right? Everybody came out the movie like, yeah, where's our Wakanda? Our response is, well, we're building it. It's Africa Town, And that's something that we could build. That's about, developing. Tapping into our own genius. We said the theme for this week was tap in, don't what? Tap out. A lot of people have given up. They're like, oh, they got it. They knocked us out. They took it. But as long as one of us is here, let's build. And it's a little more than one of us. So how do we tap into our own genius? We've been entrepreneurial. We've been innovative. We're making a way out of no way. I mean, who was doing all the work? And that led to all the inventions to do the work easier, right? But because we couldn't get the intellectual property rights, we were being robbed, right? So let's see how we can take that and use it for ourselves. And that was our idea, like, we don't want just a historic district that says, okay, Quincy Jones used to be here, this person used to be there. We want to have living monuments. There's a young Jimi Hendrix right now. Does he have a studio to go to? So that's what we want, not plaques. We want a studio, something that is actually where the history can continue to be made. The greatest way we can celebrate and honor our history is to what? Make history. Make our history count. We know this, right? What's this? It was about community ownership, disrupting gentrification. That's what, Nipsey, right there in his community. We gonna own it, we gonna build it, we gonna open the stores, right? So here, anybody know what this is? This is the Liberty Bank building. This is on 24th and Union. In 1968, the second black bank west of the Mississippi was opened in the Central District. It was called Liberty Bank. My grandfather was one of the co-founders. And now, on March 23rd of this year, we cut the ribbon on this new building, which honors the legacy of the Liberty Bank, was established to provide economic access opportunity to our community. This building has 115 units of real affordable housing, rent apartments, and it has 2,700 square feet of commercial space that's dedicated to continuing the legacy of black businesses in the community. So Earl's Barbershop, been in our neighborhood for over 30 years, is going there. We have a restaurant going in there honoring the legacy of Miss Helen's and Thompson's point of view for those people that are, you know, from the community, from the neighborhood, been around, know the history. So this is, but again, we're tapping in, we're honoring our legacy, but we're building for our future. And that's the important part. This is across the street. We put this as an installation. There's going to be a new development. Right now, we're working on our second building, right, which is Africatown Plaza. That's going to be over 130 units with more commercial space across the street from that one. These are just some conceptual designs to say, what does a community look like that's designed to celebrate and honor us? We live in states named after slave masters. We go to schools named after slave masters. Live in neighborhoods, Columbia City, named after genocide folks, Christopher Columbus, right? But when we say Africatown, people get like, well, why do you need a, well, that is the birthplace of humanity. So if we can have whole states named after just one white man, why can't we have our neighborhood reflect the place where all humanity, where all civilization started at? It's just basic, right? So it's about the Renaissance now. You know, the Phoenix, we know about the Phoenix. That's an African thing, right? From Egypt. The bird that rises from its own ashes. So this is what it's about, rebirth, rising, Renaissance. So we have businesses that are on Union that are growing to reestablish our Black Wall Street, our Black commercial district. And across the street, and we celebrate our history. That's Earl, that's one of our community artists, Melvin Freeman, fly blind guy. That's the murals he did in the neighborhood. And this was a temporary installation, but it really was a projection, because this is a building that's going across the street where Earl's was at. And now the developers are saying, okay, we're gonna honor and reflect the community that's been here. Because it should never be as if we were never here. Right. So, also, the commercial space in that building, we don't own that building, but if the developer's coming into our community, we gotta, how do we benefit, right? So the space is being prioritized for black businesses, small businesses with below market rent. So if you know, if there's businesses in here, or if you know anyone, right now is the time to have those businesses come forward, so again, we can establish our district. When we have wonderful guests come to our city, I know the first thing they say is, we want to go to the what?
I say, I want to go to the hood.
See?
That's the first thing I say.
And we like, well, right now we like, well, it used to be. But you know what they say, right? Used to be's don't make honey, right? So we got to build something so that when our family, our guests come to town, we can show them after 150 years, it's something to show. This is at our design cipher, where we're imagining, because the first thing you got to be able to do is imagine. Imagine is to get an image in, right? We got to get an image in our mind of what's possible. So we got to imagine ourselves as our best selves. What does a neighborhood actually look like? What do spaces actually look like that bring the best out of us? because we know what the environments look like that bring the worst out of us. We've survived those. But we want to move from surviving to what? To thriving. And we want to design spaces that help and communities that do that. Now we know buildings don't make communities, people do. But we do have to have space to come together. Everything that exists has to have a space. One of the things we do, we created a space called Black Dot. It was a pop-up. It was a co-working space, incubator for businesses. Because we know our businesses have to adjust. They have to adapt. It's a new economy. The mom and pop model has to advance. If you have retail, you have to be online, right? You got Amazon, they've changed the game. Kmart, they gone. Toys R Us, man. So for our little small mom and pops that don't have that much capital, we gotta adjust. We gotta create a space to grow those businesses. This is just some examples. But that was a pop-up, meaning a temporary, a test for what we want to do with the old fire station on 2030 Yesler, which was make it an innovation hub. Because if I ask you right now, where can we go to a center of black innovation, what would you tell me? Starbucks. See? And they selling us back our own what? Culture. Because coffee comes from where? Ethiopia. All right, so we want to take our own genius, our own value, and we what? Monetize that. We do trading on that to benefit us. If there's enough value to benefit others, great. We've been doing that. That's what we do. So that's just a little bit of what's going on, you know, what Africatown is about. A lot of damage has been done. On June 19th, we know our people were at what? They were in D.C., and what were they talking about? Reparations. That's from every level, because there was policies and practices that happened right here on a local level that damaged our community, right? And people benefited. They made money off it. So we need to be talking about that when we're talking about stopping gentrification or displacing this disruption. It's not just like disrupting the displacement. It's not just help us out. It's, what Jay say? Pay us like you what? Like you owe us for all the years that you, right. So, you know, this is just some of that. So we got to establish those policies, but we also have to be very proactive in designing and not always reacting to other people's designs and plans. If we don't have a plan for ourselves, someone else has a what? A plan for us. That's how we got here. They had a plan to make money off us. So now we have to, you know, constantly be coming together. This is a great platform the brothers put together. You know, we appreciate our guests from different places because we also have to what? Network, communicate. If you got something that's working where you at, share it with us so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Because what we're working against is well connected and well organized. And we've been very disorganized for many reasons which are viable, but now that we know that, we have to what? We got to do better. And this is an example of that, bringing us together, because once we come together, then we can start connecting. So I just wanted to you know, share a little bit about what's going on. Africatown is about maintaining, developing space where the beauty, the brilliance, and the best of black experience, regardless to time or geography, is the inspiration for the future that we build. That means Harlem Renaissance. That means Marcus Garvey coming from Jamaica. That means Kemet or Egypt, schools, Timbuktu. We take that and we use that as our foundation to build our future. We don't have to look and copy others. Others have been copying us. We just got to get back to ourselves, right? And so we need space to do that. That's what Africatown is about. Tap in, don't what? Tap out. We got to get connected to keep building. That's our message. That's what we're running with. And so with that, we got our Black graduation. It's our 4th annual Seattle King County Black graduation, where we celebrate our 8th graders. If you know any 8th graders moving up or high school students moving on, we celebrate them. That's June 30th, this Sunday at Langston Hughes. And then Emoji Fest in August, right? It's the biggest celebration of black people in the Pacific Northwest. Started 7 decades ago, East Madison Mardi Gras, then the Black Community Festival. Been keeping it alive, bringing us together. So tap in, don't tap out. And thank you, Brother Andre, for keeping us, bringing us together. Now this time.
That was beautiful. I'm glad that he came and just gave a little history on Seattle. The food's gonna be here around 7 or something, so we're gonna have my guy, Mysonne, who's an activist and rapper and just a powerful voice in the community, not only in New York, but all over the place, and I'm honored for him to be here. Bro, it's on you.
The streets sold me high-priced lies, and I brought them. My grandpa tried to give me the truth, but I ignored him. I saw the dudes on the corner with big chains and Jordans moving cane and thought the things they were saying was more important. All the fame and the chicks calling my name, I wanted to be a gangster. The working dudes was lame. But when I got in the game, I realized the real guys are the ones that struggle, but they still rise. It don't make you real because you deal pies. It ain't what you wear, you see real lies in your soul. It's the ones who never fold. I know dudes doing hundreds of years and never told. It's my grandfather, he showed me a man's gotta command respect and live life with honor. In life is karma, these dudes like piranhas. They going to war with 4-5s and llamas. Y'all dying for commas, I'ma die for honor. I'ma change the world before I die, I promise. I promised my mama before the day I'm deceased that I'm gonna teach my brothers to elevate from the streets. I sat down with a priest and I told him, you see, religion is one of the biggest causes of our division. Because one call him Allah and the other call him Jesus. I just call him God when I get down on my knees. Our knees is God is surrounded by violence. Ignorance gets compounded by silence. So I know better. I know I can't be selling my soul for no cheddar. So I won't let a fake rapper go and try to tell a little kid to be some dope seller. Now never on my watch. I'ma tell the kids to do better on my block, because I'm not moved by material. It don't impress me. I'd rather respect. I guess that's just me. I just be in a whole different zone. As a kid, I did things like a kid, but now I'm grown. I don't condone no senseless crime. I understand desperate measures and desperate times. Just understand that these rappers will infest your mind and lead you to death just to shine. So in the era where they rather pull triggers and sell dope, I figure why not be the real brother who sell hope? And that's what we are. That's what we are. I'm out here doing. Thank you for having me. You know what? This esteemed panel. It's hard to follow after these people. You heard Jamila almost made me cry, and this brother sound like a scientist. So and then we got Africa Town. So it's gonna be a hard act to follow. But yes, my name is Mysonne. I'm an activist, a hip hop artist, a self-proclaimed raptivist, a community leader, motivational speaker. I have an organization called Raising Kings, and that poem I just did, which is actually a rap that I made a song that I do spoken word, is actually what it is that I decided. At the age of 12, my father died of an overdose. I watched him dead on my couch. My mother was a crackhead, so I pretty much raised myself from 12 years old. I had an 11-year-old sister who I was the man of the house. The only vision of success that I ever saw was the drug dealer that was outside. He had the car that I wanted, he had the girl that I wanted, he had the respect that I wanted, he had the money that I wanted. There was no doctor next door to me. There was no lawyer that lived next door to me. There was nobody else outside the drug dealer that told me how to obtain the things that I wanted to have at that age. So that's what I modeled my life after. I was told I was lied to because he was lied to. The cycle continued. Somebody lied to him and told him that was the only way we was gonna get out. And then he lied to me and told me the same thing. And after watching my father die on my couch and seeing my mother in the streets, I thought I had no other options. I was one of the smartest kids in my school, but unfortunately I wasn't able to transfer that information, that knowledge in school because I wasn't able to even think about school. I had to figure out how I was going to survive and feed me and my 11-year-old sister at that time. So I started to be in the streets at a young age. Started committing crimes, started selling drugs, hustling, surrounded by some of the most notorious drug dealers and criminals inside the Bronx, New York. Fortunately, I was good at basketball. So I loved basketball, but I was still in the streets. So that kept me out of a little bit of trouble because I still played basketball a little bit. Because I was good, and everybody was like, yo, nah, you should stay out the streets and try to play basketball. So I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I would always escape a lot of things because some days they had basketball tournaments that I wanted to go to. And I come back and this one got locked up or this one got shot. So God always had his hand on me. He always was trying to tell me that this wasn't my reality. So as I continued to grow older, by the time I'm 18, I started liking to rap. So rapping basketball in the streets. So I was hopscotching everywhere. And I was good at rap. I was really good. I didn't think I was good, but one of my mentors, his name was June Brown, God bless her dead. He was one of Missy Elliott's backup dancers and singers, and he rapped with her. He wrote a lot of music with her. And he was the first person to encourage me to start rapping. So I started to do that at the age of 19. At the age of 19, I got a record deal. I was signed to Def Jam Records. Chris Lighty, God bless the dead, signed me at the age of 19. Thought I was out the hood. Unfortunately, after that, I got picked up for 2 armed robbery cases that I never committed. Now, I'd done a lot of things in the street, but armed robbery wasn't my thing. So I got picked up for these armed robbery cases, and I was fighting these cases, and I'm thinking innocent people don't go to jail. I ain't did that. Because most of the people that I was around, they was guilty, so I knew why they was going to jail, but like, I ain't do no robbery, so I'm good. So I'm going to case, now I got a record deal, but I got 2 armed robbery cases. So I never even told the label that I had this armed robbery case. I'm like, we good. So as soon as I signed the deal, I remember Chris Lighty asking me, so everything is good? I'm like, yeah, I just got to go to court tomorrow. And he's like, court? What you going to court for? I'm like, I just got this little armed robbery charge. It ain't really nothing. He's like, little armed robbery? What are you talking about, little armed robbery charge? I'm like, yeah, something they said that I did. I ain't even do it, but we good. He's like, what? Are you crazy? So I remember going to court that day. And when I went to court, I'm thinking they're going to throw this case out because everybody kept saying, oh, they ain't got nothing on you. They're going to throw it out. Nah, they didn't throw it. They tried to add another case to me. I went to court. They picked me up and took me to a lineup in which somebody picked me out of a lineup I never even seen before about a crime somewhere that I wasn't nowhere near. But I was picked out of lineup. So now I'm fighting 2 armed robbery charges, 19 years old, just got a record deal. And I'm thinking, how the hell did this happen? So while I'm going to this court cases, I'm fighting. I even got, it was so, the system was so crooked for me, they wouldn't even allow me to get a lawyer on my case. They told me that this trial's going to trial right now, that lawyer can't come get on this case. Nah, me not knowing the law, I'm saying they just did what they wanted to me, because if I would have known the law, I'm like, you can't tell me who my lawyer is. I'm going to fire him. But I didn't know that. I'm 19, I'm young, I'm just like, all right, whatever y'all say, I just want to go home. That's why I can identify what happened to the Central Park. How many of y'all see when they see us? So I'm able to identify with that reality. People like, yo, how you did? Nah, you scared. You young, you 18, 19, you ain't never been through this. You just want to tell them whatever you think you need to tell them to let you go. You trying to just be the best, yes, sir, whatever y'all say. If this go get me out, cool. So when they told me I couldn't have my lawyer, I went to trial. Ended up blowing trial, got sentenced to 7 to 14 years in prison. Now, got locked up before. Now, I was doing a lot of stuff in the streets, but I had never got locked up before. So this was my first time actually being in the system. And for the first, I remember 3 months of my sentence, I kept saying, what the hell am I doing in prison? I think I was in like shock. Like I was just moving just through shock, just not even believing it. It was in the newspaper, Rough Riders, Def Jam deal, Mysonne sentenced to 7 years, it's all over the newspaper. The COs is coming to my cell every 5 minutes, yo, you good? I'm just in shock that I'm actually sitting in a prison cell. Sentenced to 7 to 14 years. And then something happened. I was sitting in my cell one day, after probably about 3 months, just moving around, just in limbo. I said to myself, every day that you in here, that you don't grow, that you don't learn, that you don't evolve as a man, the system wins. The structure that was designed to defeat you wins every time that you do not grow. Every minute that you don't learn something, you don't grow mentally, physically, emotionally. If you don't turn yourself into something that is way bigger than you are before you left society, then this system is going to beat you. And at that point, I started to retrain my mind. I started to go to the yard and I started to work out. I started reading books. I started educating myself. I started looking at my surroundings and realizing only people that kept coming in and out of this prison looked like me. Only people that was coming in and out of these doors was looking like me. I seen people come, in 7 years, I watched people come in 3 and 4 bids. So I said to myself, this is designed. This is not a, we ain't just getting ourselves in, this is a trap. And it's only us. We the only ones getting trapped because they lied to us. They lied to you in the street to make you believe the only way to get success is one way. And then when they get you in here, they tell you, oh, all right, we're going to give you probation. Or we're just going to give you 1 year. And you start believing you could do that until they give you 50. And then they got you off the street. Then they done killed the whole bloodline. They lied to us. I started to realize that they lied to us, and I started to educate myself and sit down with these younger brothers and realize that most of them never had nobody to tell them they was being lied to. Most of the things in our community, our music, everything was poisoning our minds to believe something that wasn't real. So I said, I do music. And I started thinking about the music that I was putting out. The first song I put out said, my name is Mysonne Lefty, gun up in the right palm. I'm popping niggas in they sleep so they die calm. Kill or be killed. That's the shit that I'm on, Desperado style. Shooting at them side on. The streets love that. I killed about 6 people in 1 round. In the first 4 bars. Am I lying? But that's what we was gravitating. The jail cells was going crazy. They said that was the hardest bars they ever seen. And I knew at least 100 people probably went to jail based on what I said in that round. That was a fact. Because I was trying to live out my favorite rappers' bars. I wanted to shoot and sell, hustle like the drug dealers that I was listening to. Then I started realizing we training these minds of these kids. So what is my charge? What am I going to do now? I understand what's happening. Understand that they lying to us, getting us to lie to us, and then we come in here and they losing us. So what is my job? My job that I know, when you know better, you got to do better, right? I said, I have a talent, I got notoriety, I got a platform, so I have to start educating properly. I can't continue lying to these kids. I can't continue telling them that God is blessing all the trap niggas. I want to know where you at, nigga. The trappers I know is getting arrested because of rats. Sentenced to life and they ain't never coming back. That's what I know. So then I had to tell that story. I had to come home and I said, okay, I can't give it to them too preachy because they're not going to gravitate to that. Because when I was 16 and 17, nobody going to gravitate. I don't want to hear you telling me to go to school. I don't want to hear that. I knew that. So I said I have to utilize my voice and my notoriety. Since y'all recognize me for something negative, I got to grab you with that. You got to put a little bit of strawberry in the medicine. You know, that's why they got cherry flavored cough drops. Because you don't want to taste the medicine. You want to be the illusion that it's candy, but it's healing you. So that was my method. I said, okay, y'all glorify me, so I'm gonna look like y'all. I gotta know how to be fly. I know how to talk the same lingo you talk. I can rap better than half these rappers, and I got a reputation. So I'm gonna utilize that reputation and that notoriety to guide these kids out of the streets instead of putting them into these cells. So that became my purpose. So when I came home in 2006, game was changing. I said, okay, let me figure this out. You know, let me just sit back. Sometimes you got to step out and just pay attention to what's going on in the world. You got to look. I've been away 7 years, and I had to readjust myself, but I knew that my message had to change. I knew that I had been charged. I knew God had saved me, because while I was in prison, I couldn't identify why I was in prison, but while I was in prison, 2 of my friends was locked up for murders. 2 of them got murdered. 3 of them was trapped up in conspiracy cases. 2 of my friends is doing triple life right now. So God was saving me. He kept saving me. And I remember one time, I think it was the year before I went to jail, I was hustling. I was in Virginia, and I was hustling. You know, I went to the block, I'm hustling, and I remember this lady came up to me, and I never forget it. And it was the last day I sold a drug. I served this lady a drug, and she looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What you mean? I'm trying to get some money. What you mean what I'm doing here?" She said, "No, what are you doing here?" I'm shocked now. I feel like you disrespecting me. Like, what am I doing? You know, what you talking about what I'm doing here? I'm doing like everybody else. She's like, "Yo, you don't belong here. You do not belong here. Get off of this block right now." And she looked me in my eyes like she was God. Like it was like something was spiritual. She said, "Get off of this block right now. Don't you know what's going on? You see these, you're not one of these people." And I never forget that. I put that, listen, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. When she said that to me, I took that as a sign. Because you know, it's always when you look at the movie or anything, it's always that one sign that nobody takes before they get killed. Somebody be like, "He could have went that way." Somebody grabbed him. He's like, "No," and his mind was like, "Go." Nah, I took that sign. That's right. I took whatever. Look, I'm out of here, y'all. They're like, "Where you?" I'm going home. Going home. I'm jumping on the Greyhound. I'm gonna meet y'all back there. And sure enough, everybody that was in that town with me is doing 100 years right now. The whole town. They swept up the whole town. And I think about that every time, and I said, God kept saving me for a reason. Yes. So even when I was in prison doing that 7 years, it wasn't the 20 and 30 years that the rest of my friends was doing. It wasn't the death that the rest of my friends was doing. So when I came home, I said, I owe God for this. So when you see this hat that says God's work, that's what it means, because I'm out here doing God's work now. I'm not. And I move comfortable in my space. I don't have to fit in with you. I don't have to lie to my people. I don't have to say raps that lie to my people to get people to notarize me. I don't have to fit in with y'all to get notoriety. I'm not trying to fit in. I'd rather stand out. I'm not here to blend in. The purpose of my life is different, and I accept that. See, in our community, we've normalized abnormality. See, we've normalized, like they said, mediocrity. I have no problem being great. That's right. I have no problem telling you that I love me so much that I'm not going to let none of these kids die because you lied to them because you're trying to make some money. So that's what I've been charged with. So since I've been home, what I do, I have an organization called Raising Kings. So along with rapping, I take these young kids, I go into the communities where nobody goes. I go by myself because I don't fear nothing. I don't fear nothing. You know, R.I.P. to Nipsey Hussle. R.I.P. to Nipsey Hussle. That was a brother that I met. You know? A brother that I met that I was inspired by before I even met him. But when we met, we had so much in common, and the conversation that we had was so deep. So watching him lose his life pushed me to the next level. It pushed me to the next level. When they say the marathon continues, if you don't feel that in your soul, if you don't understand what that means, as a black man or a black woman, if you don't understand that right now we have to push ourselves to our greatness, then I don't know what you're getting. If you don't understand that we are born great and we cannot settle for mediocrity, Like he said, we have to normalize greatness. Everyone in here is a king. Every day, every morning, I take my son to school. And before he gets out the car, he says to me, Daddy, I'm a king and I'm chasing greatness. Every day. He knows better. That's the first thing he said. We get up, he pull up, I park, I don't say a word to him. He said, I'm a king and I'm chasing greatness. Because that's what he is. And that's what we are. So if we continue to settle, if we continue to watch these kids die, if we continue to just walk by and say they don't listen, so we ain't going to tell them nothing, then it's on us. We are controlling our future. We are raising the next generation. If we don't speak life into these kids, if we don't speak greatness into these kids, then the future ain't going to be nothing. And it's going to be your fault. If you don't want your kids or the kids that live next door to you to be better than you, then I don't even know what you're doing here. If you're a black man or a black woman and you are not pouring into somebody to make sure that they are better than you are, then you are failing. You are failing this society. I will give my life. I am resolved in the fact that I'm willing to give my life so that these kids have a better life than I have. So, inspired by Nipsey Hussle, I did a march called Kings Stop Killing Kings. I originally wanted to do it with everybody, but it was so much going on. Shout out to Big U, they did their thing in LA, and I remember Meek Mills had hit us all like we all need to do something, but everybody was charged in their own communities, and I looked up to everybody. I looked and said Big U's when they unified the Bloods and the Crips, and it inspired me, and then I seen Trade the Truth in Houston. I said, so we need to do something in New York that symbolizes that. But I don't want it to just stop at being a march. I want it to be a movement. Because the reality is when you look at what happened to Nipsey, another black man killed another black man. A king killed another king. I don't know, I don't care how you want to see it, but your birthright as a black man, you are a king. What happens throughout that translation and how you get the information, but you are born a king. So when we start identifying each other as brothers, we start looking at each other as brothers and not ops, then we can't kill each other. When you start valuing someone and you look at them and you see this is my family, when you put the neighbor back in the neighborhood and stop saying I'm from the hood and say I'm from the neighborhood and realize that every one of us have the same exact struggle, then that's what we're gonna get what we're trying to get. Right now they have succeeded in individualizing us. They have succeeded in ideologizing us, separating us based on our color, based on the amount of money we have, based on what we think, what we believe in. But we are all unified from the same struggle. How do you not want the people who struggle with you to win with you? How have we become comfortable leaving our brothers in the slums? How are we saying I don't want to get out the hood, I want to change the hood. I want to build up the hood. Why are we going to go live where they live to make their property value go up? When you become successful, live where you live and make it grow up and bring 5 more successful people there. Change the dynamics of your community. That's what success is. That's what gangster is. When we start changing the dynamics of our community, we start loving up on our brothers, we start taking that same energy that these kids are utilizing in these streets to hurt each other to build something, because it's energy. It's the same energy. I lecture scholars, I lecture teachers and influencers, and they ask me, why can't we capitalize on the intelligence and the genius of these young black boys in our school system? And I say, because you're not utilizing the methods that they learn by. You're not appealing to the attributes. We don't learn when you sit in a chair and you tell us to write something. We want to move around. We want to connect. We want to build. We want to feel our minds are challenged. So when we start that's why we got to take back our communities, because we know how to teach ours. We know how to raise ours. Everybody ain't got no ADHD. We just smarter than y'all. We want to move around and we learn at a different pace than you learn. Don't try to put that on me. had me speaking to psychologists in 3rd grade, thought I was crazy. Now I'm sitting here teaching your psychologists how to teach their classes. Ain't nothing stupid about us. Ain't nothing wrong with us. We are greatness. And when we step into that greatness and we start unifying that greatness and we start identifying that greatness in each other and building with each other and building our own community and stop trying to leave and stop trying to be better than each other and start saying, I'm not better than you. We all equal. In fact, I can identify your genius and add it with my genius and continue to build geniuses. So I'm going to leave y'all with this, because I ain't going to talk too long, because we got a lot of other brothers that want to speak. But I want you to say this. I don't have the right to do nothing. Say it again. I don't have the right to do nothing. I don't have the right to do nothing. I sat and talked with a legend, and I eagerly listened. He told me how he marched with Dr. King because he believed in his mission. He invested his money and his time to change our people's conditions, and all I could think as I heard this man speak with conviction is, I don't have the right to do nothing, because Harry Belafonte sacrificed for people like me. So if he decided to do nothing, then where would I be? You see, if he was just content with his celebrity status, there wouldn't be a Justice League or Black Lives Matter. So I don't have the right to do nothing, because we stand on the shoulders of our elders. We got to continue their fight against the system that failed us. Mr. B tells us, he drills in our mind, we got to carry this torch. You see, this is our time. Injustice is a crime, but it's about execution, and those directly impacted must be the solution. So I don't have the right to do nothing. I'm on a mission. I'm screaming until they listen. Dr. King died for freedom. I'm carrying on tradition. My people want justice. I'm carrying that petition. Police is out here killing us. We're going to need some more convictions. Peaceful and passive are not the same thing. Know the difference. You are not supposed to lay down and die with no resistance. So I don't have the right to do nothing. I don't have the right not to fight for my life. It's a gift from God. So with all of my might, I will protect my freedom, my family, my home. I know y'all gonna fight with me. Y'all ain't gonna leave me alone. So when my feet get weary and I can no longer sprint, I just think about the babies that's dying in Flint. And I say, I don't have the right to do nothing. God bless y'all, baby. Thank you for having me.
I'm very proud because I think I might have caught a half a cuss, just like a half of one. And for Corey, that's amazing. You're doing good, bro. You did great, for real. Thank you. So I'm going to bring up our last guest, Big U. I know you guys know that, if you don't know, that in Los Angeles, California, he's responsible for 81% of the gang reduction violence in Los Angeles. You all know Nipsey. He is Nipsey's OG, and I'm happy to have him here. He normally don't do panels, but he blessed us to be here. Big U. Thank you.
I want to just say blessing everybody. I'm happy to be here. And it's hard to follow that. I mean, you know, four powerful people. But I do want to say this. I want to say that my life and the work that I do in my community is about helping and giving back. And I like to say everywhere I go, I'm trying to get into heaven if it is one. You know, so so me, like a lot of brothers in the streets, 90% of the brothers in the streets, I went through prison just like most people up here. Other than Corey, he went to Walmart, or he going to Walmart. I heard that. But yeah, rent. But yeah, unfortunately, I did a lot of time in prison. And my story is pretty much like the story that everybody up here told. My mother and father was from the South, Columbus, Mississippi. They moved to LA early on, leaving the South because of the bad conditions there. And we ended up in South Central LA. It was before Crippin started and before we seen the rise of street gangs. So in '69, as he was born, I was born in '66. Most of my uncles, we grew up on the, well, we'd say the west side of LA, which was in Hoover. And we kind of adopted the gang culture from an early age. So gang banging and drug dealing was something that we grew up in. We became the gang bangers at the same time we became the drug dealers. But in saying that, I want to say this. I want to get to the end of it. Yeah, I was responsible for giving Nipsey his dream, but I was also responsible for 8 players in the NFL, 4 that are still in, 1 that plays here in Seattle, Marcus Morton, that's a lineman. I've also been responsible for over maybe 400 kids in college and out of college. I don't have a doctor yet, but I like to celebrate the work that the kids who came through my program or through our program has been able to do in our society. I've had development option now for 17 years. I've been free 17 years. I started it like the young lady did while I was in prison. I'm gonna take you back now. So I was sentenced, and let me take you back here. Unlike some of them here, I was guilty of almost everything I did. And unfortunately, I got away with a lot of stuff. So when I was sentenced to prison, although I was upset that I was being sentenced to prison at the time I was, my lack of knowledge of the prison system, of the legal system, caused me to get more time than I even felt I should have got. Because at the time that I caught my crime, I wasn't really committing crimes. I was actually in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I wasn't gonna tell on nobody. So I kind of want to take it like, now you paying back for what you did and you got away with. So the thing, I didn't have this spiritual awakening. I had more of an anger. It was more anger with me because I was in court fighting a case and they were talking a language in front of me that I should have been able to understand. And I couldn't understand the language that they were using in front of me, and it was still English. And at that point in my life, I realized that I was in a battle against a people who knew more about me and who could speak a language in front of me that I could not understand. So after getting sentenced to 56 years and being numb in court, and like the brother said, I was so numb because the judge said you're gonna get 100 years, 100 months for this, 34 months for this, 15 months for this, and I'm thinking like, damn, how much time did he give me? And then I looked back at my mother and my 2 kids and I said, wow, they're gonna be flying cars when I come home. And it was at that time that I went back to the holding tank and I said, they'll never be able to do this to me again. And that was my revelation. And that's what changed me. It changed me because I had an experience to where somebody else had control of my body. And I had gave it to them, though, in my own ignorance and being in the streets. Again, let me take you back. It was 7 of us, all first cousins, that lived on the street in what became the 60s. All of us eventually became black belts in martial arts. All of us were good at sports. But our teachers were not the best teachers. So our teachers were teaching us to sell drugs, sell PCP, to do something that wasn't productive for us as young people. And we were always taught, when you get popped, because you're gonna get popped, don't tell. That's the rule. We stuck with the rule. Out of the 7 first cousins, 20 of us on this block, only 5 of us are still living. I mean, 15 are dead. And I was one of the lucky ones. And so Four of my cousins died before the age of 19. I was shot 5 times, all different incidents before the age of 19. And then 7 times after that. 2 more times after that. So 7 times, 7 different incidents, in total. But I'm the lucky one. But I still ended up doing 13 years in prison, 3 years and 9 months in the SHU. Total, not breaking up. So 3 years and 9 months total confinement, and then I came home. But in that time, I wanted to change myself, and I wanted to find a way to change where we come from, the Crenshaw community. So I had to go within myself to find a way to heal myself and then apologize to my kids, because now I've been gone 13 years. And my sons, who were babies when I left, had now started becoming young teenagers, then some becoming young adults, and they hadn't actually had a chance to commune with me, to build with me. So now my fight was, I didn't want my sons to die in the streets and to die from the same thing that I was responsible for building. So I started in prison, and I started with brothers with a like mind who had the mentality to say, look, we want to change this, we want to do something better. And this is what gets me to this point today, to be able to say to brothers in the streets, look, I want everybody to be able to come together and move. So when Nipsey died, I'm gonna come back to this point. When Nipsey died, it was the most tragic point for our community and in the communities around us, because his message was so strong, and we didn't ourselves realize how strong the message was at the time. You know what I mean? And but I say that to say that it was brothers from different neighborhoods, gangs that we had never seen or talked to in our 40-year gang banging fightings, who had contacted me and wanted to come pay respect because of the work that they had seen that I had did, Nipsey had did, and we was doing in our community. And I say this to young brothers right now today, that I had a lot of help along the way to become what we are today, the struggle that we're doing, and the work that we're doing in this community today. It was a lot of people who poured into that. And I never want to talk without thanking the women, because I'm a man who was blessed by having a lot of strong women in my life. My mother, my sisters, my aunties, and I try to honor women everywhere I go, because that was, when I failed, it was women. When I was struggling with situations, it was women. When I needed money, it was women. My homeboys was there too, but my foundation were the women who were in my community and the women who were in my life, especially my mother and my sisters, and later my homegirls who eventually became my sisters. And they were the bedrock of me, even the bedrock to my organization to this day. So, but when I made the decision not to push the hard line on the hood, I had a real struggle with my homeboys. Now imagine me being a terror in the streets, reading Malcolm X's autobiography, changing my mind about selling dopes and gangbanging, but then going to prison. So that means that I had already made a name for myself before I even tried to make a change for myself. Now I get to prison, and everybody wanted to test the hand. So that means I had to discipline dudes, but then come back and be able to teach them at the same time. Look, you know what I mean? Now, I'm gonna break your jaw, but I don't want to have to do this to the next one. I mean, it's the truth, because some brothers just really didn't accept the fact that I wasn't on that. You know what I mean? And I'm like, but I'm not going to be no victim at the same time either. So this has been my walk. This has been my walk for these last 17 free years. I have to also be conscious of where I can go, the things I can do, the people I minister to, because some people just don't forget. You know, he comes from this society, and that's hard, but it's a maneuver that I'm trying to navigate. And this is what failed with Nipsey, who was like a son to me. And just moving and trying to be that beacon of light and hope for our people, but at the same time, you got people who just feel a certain kind of way about us. You know what I mean? And the struggles to be there. Let me give you a little bit of light on how we get to where we are and how we struggle to build our community. When I met Nipsey, I just came home in 2004. I had already been with Corrupt. My first artist was Corrupt, and then I left and went to prison. I came home. I dealt with a lot of artists in the music industry. Then I came and found Nipsey when I got ready to break off on my own. Nipsey was just like all the rest of the youngsters. He was a gangbanger, full-out gangbanging in the streets. But he had a mindset to do and create his own company. He had started Slaughterware Records. He didn't know how to register it. He didn't know how to make it a corporation. I came in and said, let me show you how to do this. He was a really good student. So the things I had learned on my journey in prison, it was easy for me to pour those things into him. And then this, you just seen a transition in his music. His music went from Bullets Don't Have No Names to more to gangbanging music, to where you see as he grew older, he was able to take what we were doing. When I first came home, my homeboys didn't understand what I was telling them when I closed down our area. Like the brother was talking about Africa Town. And see, in my mind, I might say his name wrong, Mao Zedong. And when he closed down China, I don't know if I said his name right, but my mindset for our community was the same thing. We stopped letting people come in and film in our neighborhood. And I wouldn't let nobody come film no movies, bring no actors into our neighborhood. You couldn't come in and open up no stores unless we was getting something from it. Now, my little homies, my young ones, didn't understand what I was doing. They thought I was being a bully. So they was like, nah, bro, we want to come in. I'm like, no. We have to control what comes in and out of our neighborhood. And so at the time, I'm fresh home, and the homies don't understand that, even the older ones. Because then we got white people coming in trying to do certain things. We got people coming in. We got us doing stuff, not understanding what it is to own your own business, what it is to have or set up in a corporation, what it is to even get your taxes done. And this is stuff that when I came home, I was implementing that. Nipsey caught it. Nipsey caught it, ran with it, and there's several other brothers who caught it also and ran with it and been successful. You know what I mean? In our community. But I say that we as men, black men, have a responsibility to continue to give back. No matter what the struggle, because it's always going to be a push, a give, and a take. Like me, they call me a bully, but I mean, you don't understand what I'm doing until you see my completion, or until you see the greatness of somebody else who just passed. You know what I mean? Because he couldn't get that from nobody else but somebody else who had went through something and could tell it to him. You know what I mean? It had to be somebody to give it to him. You know what I mean? So, and I was just blessed to be the one that actually come in his life at the time to give it to him. As well, like I said, I have youngsters who are in the NFL, and I try to explain to these babies when I talk to them that it's a period. Sports is a period. You only gonna be there if you're lucky to get 10 years. What happens after the 10 years? You know what I mean? And then let me give this too, because I like people to understand, because my major sport is always football. So we got athletes who come in football, and I like to explain to these babies that it's 3 million kids that play Pop Warner football. 3 million. After 3 million, it's only 1.4 that play high school football. From high school football, there's only about 250,000 that go on to play college. From college, it's only 250 that get invited. I didn't make no mistake. It's only 250 that get invited to the combine. I mean, it's only 50 get invited to combine, 250 that get drafted. And it's another 30, 40 that make it in the league. do you know our babies have a better chance at becoming rocket scientists than they do at becoming athletes? Yes. Yes. There are about 3,500 professional athletes over a 3-year span. 3,500. You got that many rocket scientists and more. So realistically, your kids have a better chance at becoming a rocket scientist. And get this, the average athlete makes about $4 million over their 4 to 5 year career that they actually get to keep. As a rocket scientist, you can make that every 5 years and then do it for 25 to 30 years. You understand what I'm saying? And so and I was talking earlier to a brother about, I went to Facebook. My brother in the back took us to Facebook. And we call him Thor. We have a program that we like to administer kids to about doing other things other than sports. What we are only supposed to be able to do, that's entertainment, sports, and all of those things there within. Or rapping or what else, but none of this stuff lasts for long. But as black men, we have to fight the fight on re-educating our people. And we have to fight the fight on our mental respect to our women. Major key. Major key. No, I've been married since I've been with my wife since I was 17. I've been married since I can remember, you know. And I'm not perfect though, but I say this though, I respect my wife and I love my wife to death. And also at the same time, I look for somebody who was close to my mother. So that means that the woman has to be what a man wants to see or he's seen in his mother. And that's very important. But I believe that the man needs to have a commitment to the woman to help raise healthy children who can go through the things they're going to go through and be able to come back out the water and be able to become productive citizens. Again, I always preach that you have to have a strong foundation. Because when I was gone, during my time, my wife was right there. You know what I mean? And like the sister said, her mother was calling, I wasn't calling mama, I was calling my wife. You know what I mean? And she got done what I needed to get done. And I needed her to copy books, to trade books, and I wanted her to send me stuff to help educate me. And I was having her send books to every prison. I had set up on the yard, we had study classes. And I don't know, I'm gonna go into that, but we had study classes where I would teach brothers, and I would learn myself from other brothers on how to become a better person and to be able to prepare myself for the struggle. Because we had a psychology class we used to do, and it was, I want to say it was really hard to do it because we weren't prepared to be able to talk to people about their issues and to talk to black men about the pain that we had suffered in what made us hard and what made us, you know, a threat to ourselves. Because to hear a black man say that he was molested and you in prison and you hearing that and you saying, damn, bro, I used to look at you a different way, but now you have to retain that. And so after being in prison and doing the classes, I come to learn that a lot of us have suffered stuff or things that we seen and the things that hurt us. And what I can say is this, I watched my mother get assaulted by my stepfather. And that, I think, was one of the things that made me so hard in the gang life because I was young, I was a baby, and I couldn't do nothing about it. But I can visualize the whole picture of this man assault my mother, and she's in the bathtub, and I'm trying to help, and I can't do nothing. So when I got old enough and visualizing that, it made me say that'll never happen again. And then and I'm glad she didn't have a gun in the house, because I had watched enough gunplay on all of the Westerns to know that when I get old enough to become a man, I'm not gonna allow this to ever happen. Never again. So I'm saying that to say that we have a lot of men who are damaged, and then we don't have outlets to deal with that. You know, we don't have a way of saying, this is what I want to do, how I can get to my people, how I can change myself and heal me. You know what I mean? And so when we deal with relations between us and us as a people, we have to understand that sometimes what happened to us in history is still affecting us, because it's in our blood, it's in our system. You know what I mean? So, and I say that I look at it in a lot of kids. I look at it in drug use. I look at, because me, myself, I was lucky. My mother asked me, again, she asked me not to use drugs. I have never used drugs. She told me don't smoke. I didn't smoke. She told me don't get no tattoos. I don't have no tattoos. But that was my relationship with my mother. She didn't know what gangbanging was. So, you know, she didn't know what the hood was. You know what I mean? She used to go to Tijuana and buy us blue rags. She didn't know. She didn't have no idea. Until I was in jail, and she was like, these people like, your son is a serial. Like, this dude is like, him and his team is like, what is, and it shocked her. You know what I mean? But she was like, what is all this? But she was my rock. But I was too far gone. I was too far gone. I was already in. Already been shot 2 times. She never knew it. You know, went to my homeboy house. His mother was a nurse. Tapped me up, wrapped me up. She never knew any of that until I was in Central Juvenile Hall, and it was a newspaper article. And her son and her 2 nephews was in the newspaper article. And everybody looking like, but then I left. I got kicked out of California and went to Chicago, and that's when I met my real father. And so from there, came back to LA, and the journey went from there. And then, you know, it was just the ignorance continuing to repeat it. And I'm blessed to say that we had to go through that to get to where I am today. And my life today is about really helping young black men reach the goals that they have set for themselves, and to prepare them to know that there is a struggle. Yes. Let me tell you, and then I'm gonna give it the mic. I had a conversation with Nipsey. He was going through something with Lauren, and I told him. And it's funny that people talk about Lauren. I knew Lauren before I knew Nipsey. Yeah, this is crazy. Because she was one of my homeboys. She was best friends to my homeboy's daughter. So I already knew her. And then Nipsey used to talk about her. And then I'd be like, you ain't never gonna get her. And then, and so as we started moving in the music industry, he finally got her. And then he came to me right before he passed. They was going through something. And he was like, man, well, I ain't ready to settle down. I said, shoot, nobody ain't ready to settle down. But are you ready to commit to her, though? You know what I mean? I don't know if I was ready to settle down, but I'm committed to her. Everything I got is hers, and whatever she got, I hope is mine. But you got to be committed to her. And this was the talk. This is how sharp he was. And he was like, he left, he called me back, and then see, like, they call me Big U, but they also call me Draws. If you in my neighborhood, you're gonna call me Draws. If you Big U, if you know me on the streets and I don't know you, they're gonna call me Big U. So in a lot of songs, he'll say Draws, and y'all hear him say, Big U, that's me. And he was like, Draws, I think I'm ready. I said, well, nigga, you need to tell her. but it was so beautiful because it was young love. And, you know, he's still struggling. And I say that to men all the time, that you ain't never gonna be perfect. When you get ready to go to church, you're not gonna be perfect. When you get ready to go to the mosque, you're not gonna be perfect. If you was perfect, you wouldn't need to go. If you had everything put together, you would not need to go. There wouldn't be no reason to go, none whatsoever. And I'm just blessed to say again, I have some beautiful women in my life who are on my side. You know what I mean? And I know that, again, I'm glad the brother brought me. And I didn't want to come speak, but, you know, my manager back told me, yeah, you're going. You know, so, but, I mean, you know, it's a lot on us. It's a lot on our community. We had a major loss, and it's just all over the paper. And I don't think nobody was ready to deal with it or knew how to deal with it. And it's so many ignorant people now, and this internet is just so ignorant. You know, it just makes it hard for you to mourn, you know what I mean, because of ignorance. But Doe told me I had to come. And I say this again, that I want to take what this brother's doing right here. And when I heard what he was able to do for you guys out here and helping to stop the killing of unarmed black men, I had to come because I need that. I need to take what you're doing back home. Yes. You know, because they're killing brothers, I mean, for free. And the way the law is set up, there's no way to combat it. You don't even get charged with it. You know, and we all have targets. It's not right that when I get ready to get pulled over, I'm in fear of my life. I'm not in fear of this $75 ticket, or even if it's $200 for speeding. I'm in fear that I'm gonna lose my life. I'm not gonna see my kids no more. And you got people who have to teach our kids how to get pulled over by officers who are disgruntled. And so what you did is honorable. And I don't think we can ever pass back. And I definitely want to know how we can take that back to LA. You know? Definitely. And I'm gonna leave with this, but I do want to say that and to put a cap on it, the gang violence in LA is the lowest it's been since 1967. All right. Cripping came in '69, so it's lower than it's been since then. Even after even after Nipsey passed, it went up a little bit, and it's still kind of like wobbling. But where we were is the lowest it's been. And that's because it wasn't, a lot of people say I had a lot to do with it. I had a lot to do with the structure of it. But it was an idea, I'm not even sure who came up with it, with Dianne Feinstein wrote a bill that came down to start employing so-called shot callers in each neighborhoods and helping them form organizations that they can go out and hire different people. When I came home in 2004, I was just a brainchild who took something that they were already trying to do and shaped it in a way to where it could actually work. And so, and I like to, because you giving us something, and I like to give back. What we did was I hired 2 Bloods, 2 A-Trays, 3 Rolling 60s. What they do, they had a map to work these areas. And it was just really a lot of the killings is about rumor control. And now we see a lot of the killings now is about the internet going back and forth. But we were able to go in and give these brothers jobs. And with them hitting these jobs, they were able to work, and this is all they did. They have health benefits. They make it $2,500 a month to work and make sure certain areas stay safe. That is not a lot for the city to pay for. Right. That is not a lot. With the way it's structured, And what we do is in the program, and this is through the mayor's office, so I have to give them applause too, because we're able to I'm able to run some of my sports program from the money that they give us, and then I'm able to do different outreach programs from the money that they give us. But it's really the brothers that's on the street. We call them crisis intervention workers. So these brothers are the ones who are ex-gang members who have influence in their neighborhood, who getting paid, again, to make sure that the violence is not going on in their neighborhood. And I think that you guys need to make the city adopt these programs, because this program has been really, really helpful in our community. And it was, and I don't like to say that I did it, but it was me being a part of the program that made all the other shot callers or dudes who had influence feel comfortable doing it, because they was like, oh, Big, you doing it. And then so they trusted that if I was doing it, then it ain't gonna be no bull crap. Not more that I went out and said, hey, nobody do no gang banging. It was just the fact that because of my track record and because of the success we had in the hood, brothers followed that. And it can be implemented all over. We tried to take it to different places, but the cities don't want it because they need the violence. They need the violence. And cops need a reason to maintain jobs. If you drop the killings, then guess what happens? No reason to have 100,000 cops. So now you got white boys who live in the suburbs, that live other places, who don't have jobs that come in our neighborhoods no more. Because the cops don't look like us anyway. So if you kill the violence, you're killing their jobs. Think about it. So with that, my organization is Developing Option. My name is Big U, Eugene Henley, and thank you guys for having me.